Hello everybody and welcome to Adobe Live. We would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are creating and streaming from today and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. My name is Flynn and I'm here today for the very first time on Adobe Live, kind of, except for the Adobe Max thing we did, with concept and character artist Pablo Munoz Gomez. Oh no, I didn't do it right. How you doing?
How you doing, Flynn? Yeah, no, you did it right. Pablo Munoz. It's a tricky one.
It is a tricky one. I'll get it right before we're done. But it's great to have you here on Adobe Live. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Just getting ready to show some cool stuff today with the Adobe 3D tools, which I use almost on a daily basis.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So so we did do an Adobe Live kind of. We did a Meet the Speaker thing. You did an awesome Adobe Max session for us, and then we kind of had a chat afterwards after that. But we haven't had you here on Adobe Live to spend a little bit more time with you, which is kind of crazy because it's almost the middle of the year. So yeah, I'm really pumped. I'm really excited for this. 3D is not something I'm super comfortable with. So I'm leaving myself in your capable hands. You're going to teach me the ways.
Yeah, no worries. I think a lot of the things that I have prepared are, if you're coming from that sort of like 2D background, you will feel comfortable and familiar with the tools that I'm going to use, even though they're all in 3D. But very, very similar stuff.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's get to know you a little bit better. You have such amazing work on your ArtStation website. Let's jump over and have a look at this. I said before, I would usually pick a project or two and say, hey, I really like this one, or maybe you can tell us about this. This is really great. But I just can't pick a single thing. They're all like, I'm serious. This happens all the time. But there's so like, I want to, I'm going to let you pick because they're just all so incredible. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Can you see the screen and everything?
Yeah, we've got your screen up. Yeah, looks awesome. Great.
I think I can just cover a few projects that somehow are related to Adobe stuff because again, I kind of like use all these tools on a daily basis. Everything that you see here, in one way or another, it went through Photoshop, for example, just to wrap up the project. There's the composition of things. I use Adobe 3D Painter in 100% of the cases, to be honest, or 99% of the cases to texture things. I create the materials as well with either sampler or painter. So, different projects obviously have different ways of producing the final result. But for the most part, that's how I produce this type of artwork. So let me just cover a couple of them. So this one right here is a project that I did to test when I was doing the beta testing for Adobe 3D Stager and Adobe 3D Painter. Also a sampler as well, I think. So all the materials that you see here were created with either sampler and painter. And then I just put everything into Adobe Stager, which is the rendering application. And all of this is just a raw render. I didn't do much other than just a bit of color correction. This is Adobe 3D Stager, by the way, which is something that I'll be covering as well, hopefully. So yeah, it's a very simple software, very intuitive as well. For example, something that I really like about this, just on a side note, in some more complicated or more advanced render, let's call it like that, you have things like the depth of field and the aperture of the lenses. And, if you're not familiar with photography and things like that, it might be a little bit hard to relate to that. Whereas in something like 3D Sampler, you have a slider that just it's called blur. So you can just blur the background and create that sort of effect that you see here at the background.
Oh, I've lost you for a second there. We may have lost Pablo for a second there. He'll jump back, I'm sure, in a moment. Oh, we lost you for a second, but it looks like you're back.
Oh, okay. That was weird. Yeah, your camera froze a little bit, but I was still talking, so I don't know.
That's all right. We'll keep going. Hopefully that was just a little blip.
Yeah, don't know what that is, but anyway, I was just covering this, that this is another render or another thing that I did with Adobe 3D Stager, just to test hard surface modeling. And this nice material that you see here, the plastic, the orange plastic, it has that translucent effect, so you can see a little bit inside of the model. So those are like really advanced, let's say, features of a material on a render engine that Adobe 3D Stager covers really, really nice. Let's go to another one. This one is a little bit creepy, so if you cannot handle this couple of like creepy gore things, cover your eyes. But this is another thing that I did for Adobe 3D Painter when they released a set of highly detailed tools or materials that you can apply to create skin. So I just created like a completely decaying skin with sores and wounds and kind of like a zombie, really. So all of these details are created directly in Substance 3D Painter through if you're familiar with 3D, there's normal map. So the normal map is the one that produces that highly concentrated, high frequency detail in the texture. So all of that is from that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I just chose this one, even though it's a little bit creepy to see. So that just to show that the amount of detail that you can get with just texture in the software.
That's amazing. Yeah, like that viscera kind of over the skin, transparent,
right?
Like very creepy, but like it's incredible.
Yeah, and it doesn't. Let me just show you. It doesn't show it properly, but you kind of see this is also printed in 3D.
Wow.
I'm gonna take my head outside. So this is the 3D print, and it was directly printed in color. So there's some areas that you can sort of see all that nice color and detail. But yeah, it was a really fun project, and it also taught me a few things about the workflow.
Yeah.
All right, let me just
autofocus had you blurred for a bit then, but yeah, you're back. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's another project, but I think we can I don't know, unless you want to see a specific one, maybe this one. This one was featured in the Adobe 3D magazine, so you can actually read a bit of the breakdown, and the zombie as well. The zombie, you can see the progress of how I build it and all the different things that I use for the material. But this is also another thing that I use 3D Painter for, just to create the somehow realistic textures in a more stylized character. So yeah, that's how I use the tools. Let me just get out of this one here. And this one as well, this is a more kind of like, I would say a more intricate model that I did with Adobe 3D Painter as well, just to create all the details for the clothing and the textures, and all of that is 3D Painter. And this one actually was in the splash screen of 3D Painter a few years ago. So yeah, it's a really nice project that I quite like. Yeah, but anyway, so unless you want me to show a specific one, we can probably move on and get to the good stuff.
All right, that sounds great. Yeah, man, it's just it's so incredible. I got so many questions, but I don't want to kind of hold up all the things that that you have to show. So I'll hold back until we jump into the process.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so other than that, just in case you want to know more about what I do and the stuff, the type of stuff that I share with the community and what I teach and all of that, you can go to the ZBrush Guides website. This is 99% of the things that you'll find here are free resources, tutorials. You get notified when I go live with different things. So this one right now we're live, so this is not relevant anymore, but that's us. Yeah, so you can see there's a bunch of tutorials covering a bunch of different things, mainly ZBrush related, but I end up like in 3D tools anyway. So that's a resource for you. The 3dconceptartist.com, this is my academy online where I teach online, and I have a bunch of different courses as well, like how to create assets. So this workshop, for example, the asset library workshop is focusing mainly, it does a bit of brushes in ZBrush, but there's a big part of creating materials for 3D Painter and 3D Sampler and creating your own custom library of material. That's the idea. So yeah, feel free to browse through these resources. And finally, the 3D Snippets is kind of like a personal project that I have. It's a kind of like a digital magazine, very small magazine that I have an issue every month, and I cover a project or the making of a project every month. So we're actually about to start a new project this month. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it there because it's a bit too much.
Man, you do so much content.
Yeah, it's a busy time.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's. If you're happy for me to get started with, I'm just gonna cover briefly the overview and what I'm gonna be covered today with the different tools.
Let's do it. And if you're watching as well, any questions, feel free to throw them in chat as we're going along, because we are live.
Yeah, happy to answer anything as I go through. If it is not related to what I'm showing you, maybe we can do a quick Q&A at the end or something like that. But yeah, happy to answer anything as I go. So I'm going to cover, this is just ZBrush, by the way. This crazy UI, if you're not familiar with, it's just my personal customized UI. It doesn't really look like this. Let me just show you. Restore standard UI. So this is more like what ZBrush looks like if you open a new version of ZBrush. But yeah, the reason I'm showing you this is because this is how I build these assets. And if you want to follow along with this live stream or what we're going to be doing tomorrow, you can download these resources. Flynn might share a link to download them, and you get this, basically the sword and the shield, right, from Zelda.
Awesome.
It's a bit more stylized, and I'm just gonna play around with the materials a little bit, but you can get them and you can follow along. So I use ZBrush to build this or to model it, but the equivalent, if you want to use the Adobe 3D tools, you can use 3D Modeler. It's just that I've been using ZBrush for such a long time that making something like this, it makes it a lot easier for me to just build it in ZBrush, but you can do it in 3D Modeler as well. Other than that, I just exported this as an OBJ. So as an .obj, that's the format for 3D, and I created UVs, which is kind of like unwrapping the object in 3D. So I'll show you what that means. Actually, I don't have it in here, so I'll just show you after. But anyway, that's ZBrush. You don't have to know anything. I just wanted to give you a background of where the files came. So the other application that we're going to be using is this Adobe 3D Sampler, and the other one is 3D Painter. The third application is 3D Stager, but I don't think we're going to get to it today. But I'll cover that hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
In terms of the workflow, what I like to do is have a look at what I have, let's say, as my object in 3D. So in this case, the shield and the sword, and try to imagine what are the materials that I want to use. So in this case, let's say the outer edge of the shield would be metallic, but I want to change things a little bit, and the inside, the blue area, would be a bit of a wood material, maybe with some paint, war paint or something like that. So right now, what I can see is I have a couple of materials that are metal and wood material. So we're gonna build these materials first, and then we're gonna spend some time applying it. So that's what you can do with Adobe 3D Sampler, and it's super easy to do. All you need to do is have a texture. So I have a free texture that I downloaded. I think this one is from I don't know if it is from Adobe stock. But anyway, it's just a texture of a wooden floor, maybe some wooden planks, and this is just an image, a photograph that you can also use your phone to take a photo of whatever material you want to create, and then you bring it into Sampler to build the material. So let's do that. I'm gonna drag and drop it literally here into whatever space, and as soon as you do that, you get this image to material with AI powered, which is fantastic. You can just click on import, and it's going to go through the process of building an entire material out of a single image. And I'm going to cover very quickly what that means for anyone that might not be familiar with 3D applications, or what is called the PBR, or the physically based rendering workflow. So right now, if I press the Alt key and the left click on my mouse, I can rotate around, and the Shift and the right click, I can move the light around, and you see how all these details from the wood are kind of reacting to the light. And it's not great right now. We're gonna tweak this, but I just want to show you a couple of things. So if I go here at the top and click on 2D only, that gives me the view of the entire image. And if I scroll with the mouse wheel, you'll see it is duplicating the same image. So you can press the letter T for tile. So very convenient. And then you see just the image. And what I was going to talk about the materials is that at the bottom, you see that I have base color, I have normal, roughness, metallic, all of this stuff. So essentially what the software does is creating a series of 2D images, or it extracts those 2D images from the photo to build the qualities of the material. So the base color is also sometimes called albedo or diffuse color, and it's essentially just the color information of this wood. The normal is going to give you all those tiny intricate details, and it looks like this because it uses the RGB channels, the red, green, and blue channels of an image to essentially tell the software how to read the details or like the direction of the light, basically.
Right.
The roughness is the black and white image that tells you what areas are going to be more shiny or shinier than others or more opaque. So you can change all of that. Metallic, obviously, right now is full black because it recognizes that it's kind of like a wood material and doesn't need any metal. The height map is, or this height map is just to displace the object. We're going to try to ignore this a little bit. The ambient occlusion is for the contact shadows. So what's amazing really is that in a simple drag and drop, and it just creates the material for you. So let's go back into the 3D just by clicking here. You can also press the number 2 to go into 2D or 3 to go in 3D. Very convenient.
Oh, that's convenient, yeah.
So let's just do a couple of things to make this look a little bit better. So if I go here to these shader settings, actually not the shader, the viewer. So if I click here, you can change the way that you view the material or the different objects. So we can choose something like this rounded cone, rounded cube, or you can use the matte material. I think this one should be okay. But if you're doing something like clothing or a fabric material, there's better ways to visualize it. So I think I'm happy with this. Let's go ahead and change the tiling so that we don't see that weird cut, because we're not gonna see it anyway. So here at the bottom, you have the camera tools, the rendering, the displacement. Actually, I'm gonna change this and I'll show you what this does. So if I get closer here and I change the displacement, it's basically displacing the geometry based on that black and white image. So whatever is white is going to push it out, and whatever is black is going to push it in. But I don't want to have any distortion of the mesh, maybe just a tiny bit, 0.01. But we still get all the details. If I rotate the light around, you see all of those crevices are coming from the normal map, that kind of like purple image, right? And what I want to change is the tiling. So here, let's set it to 1, so there is no tiling. And we can see kind of like the photo kind of like projected in here. Mm-hmm. And what we did when we imported the texture is it automatically created these 3 things. So the first one is the base material, and that gives you the original kind of like settings for whatever material you want to create. So if you want to start with, if you're building concrete, there's a concrete material. You can hover over, it will tell you. Right now it's kind of like showing me on a different screen, but I know that this one, this material right here, if I click it, gives me the settings for a wood material. So I click on that and you see it just changes the base color and it changes the roughness. If I change the roughness manually, it will actually change, well, not in here, but let's just set this and I'll show you what I mean. The roughness is going to change how rough the surface is, so how reflective it would be. Mm-hmm. So in the image to material, this is the node or the effect that is creating this whole set of effects. I can go to the roughness here at the bottom and I can change the base value. This is going to show what I mean. So this is now very shiny, like it's maybe like a wet wooden floor, or I can push it all the way to 1 and now it's very, very matte, kind of like a concrete or something similar. So you can play around with the value of this to determine, okay, I want this to be, somehow matte, but that still get me a little bit of reflection. If that is a little too much. Another thing that you can do is play with the variations in roughness. So it's going to use, let's get closer here. It's going to use some of the difference in the details to add or remove roughness. Is very subtle, but it's good to have a bit of variation. And the rest of them are pretty self-explanatory. You can just vary the softness a bit. But yeah, so this is very basic, right? Then you have the micro details, the medium details, and the large details. That's just to control how much detail you're actually going to get from these wooden planks, right? So if I go into the 2D and 3D, I can see the 3D view where I have all the effect of all the maps of all the materials. But then I can just go into something like the height, right? And this one shows you the black and white difference in height, right? So you can change the micro details and you can see it in real time here in the 3D viewport.
Right. If
I have a lot of details, you have all of these. It's a bit blurry, but you have all those details. This is also has to do with the size of the image that you use and the texture size. So right now I'm using 2K, but I can go to 4K and that will give me, it's going to be a little bit slower, but it's going to give me a lot more details.
So is that rendering live? Is that what it's trying to do, or is it still?
Yeah. This is not even rendering. This is just a preview.
Right. Yeah.
But it's you can move the light and it gives you a pretty good result. So it's using that PBR workflow, which is you set a set of images that create the features of the material or the settings of the material to create this in real time. But yeah, you can do this in real time.
Cool. And so sorry, just a quick question on this as well. Like,
go for it.
You've got one kind of cube here. If you were creating a scene, is this something that you would do to one item and then apply to all, or is this something that you would do as you're going through the process?
That's a great question. Yeah. I kind of like assumed it. Sorry. So basically, what I change here, the viewer settings, it is just how the material is applied on a preview object. All I'm doing is creating the material and tweaking all the settings so that the material looks right, and then I can take it and apply it whatever I want. So this is just to build the material, not to texture anything. That's where it's a material building application, whereas a 3D Painter is the texture authoring tool. So you take all of those materials and then you apply them in Painter.
Gotcha.
But I'll cover that in a bit. Maybe just if you can give me a reminder of time, maybe 20 minutes out. Or 15 minutes before we finish, so that if I'm still in this over, I'll jump into the other one.
Yeah, no worries. Yep, I can do that.
Yeah, it's just that sometimes, like for example, if you're doing a material for clothing, like a jean or I don't know, leather material, it might be better to visualize it in an object like this, like a shirt or this piece of clothing. Whereas if you're doing wood, it doesn't really feel right. So I just use a rounded cube, but you can absolutely go for anything. Maybe even this one is better to visualize the material of the wood. But going back to what I was saying in the properties here is that you can control like the amount of details. So let's say if you want to change the large details, you see that I'm gonna actually change it back to 2K so that I can work a little bit faster.
And there was a question, is there a recommended resolution for the images you use to create your own textures?
Yeah, the larger the better. I usually go for, 2K is plenty, especially if you're gonna tile the texture. But in this case, I'm not gonna tile it. But yeah, the larger the better. Sampler can handle, quite a few pixels of quality, so it's pretty easy. So basically what I was saying is that micro details, medium and large, you can control, these large crevices in between. The micro details will target those tiny details in the vines and all of that. Then you have the ambient occlusion that changes the darkness in between the crevices. So usually in wood, you might try to stay away from adding ambient occlusion, but in this case, I think it just helps to add a little bit to darken that area. And then you have a very important one, which is the daylight intensity. So that's something probably to answer that question. If I go to the base color, you'll see, let's go to 2D, pressing 2. The daylight intensity, what it does is it takes the original image and it tries to remove any gradation of light. So if you take a photo and there is like a hard shadow, it tries to change that so that everything looks the same, because ultimately what you want with your material is to have something like this, very clean, and just let the 3D lights in the rendering software in 3D Stager, when we get to it, to dictate where the light is coming from and the cast shadows. So you can change that and you'll see this is the original image. And if I push the daylight intensity forward, you see it just removes all those harsh shadows in the base material or in the base texture, and I think that is a good thing. Right. That's what you want. So as a piece of
you want
advice,
consistency. You don't kind of want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So for example, if you have an image that you take and it's a very sunny day and has a very harsh shadows, that might not give you the best results when it comes to texturing. So the ideal way to texture something or just to capture an image for texturing would be a diffuse light. So a very cloudy day that there's no harsh shadows, and you get something like this pretty easy. Now, this is kind of like the basics of like just dragging and dropping a photo into something like 3D Sampler to create a material. So right now we're creating just the wood material. But if I go back into 3D, pressing 3, let's press 3. There we go. There's a lot more things that you can do to it, right? So like I said, these are the basics. And let's say that I'm happy with these basics. I might want to change the amount of details that are in this, because it's a little bit too strong. See, like if I rotate around, you see the light, it's a bit too strong. So you can just go to this icon right here, which says add layer, and that's just to create effects. And you can click on it and type something like adjust. And you get this normal and height adjustment. And remember, the normal is what I mentioned is the purple image that gives you all the tiny details, and the height is just distorting the displays in the mesh. So this normal and height adjustment allows you to change all of that. So I'm going to enable the height as well. So you see I have normal and height. And for the height, I'm going to change from auto to range. So the range is just going to give me a range from 0 to 1. By default, it's set to 0.5. So if I take the range and I set it to 0, and also I'm going to change the normal to 0, you see that there is no height information or any detail information, right?
Right.
And then I can just start pushing the range slightly, and that's going to give me a little bit of variation in the large portions or the large volumes of the mesh. And then for all the micro details, all these crevices and all of that, that's where the normal comes into play. So I can just push this, and I just usually use the adjustment to tweak it so that it is a little bit more subtle.
Right.
All right. So it's, when it comes to texturing and creating materials, it's all about the subtleties. So sometimes, because it's really easy, you can go overboard with certain things, but it's good to understand what the sliders do, and you can just play around with them. Just go like this and say, this giving me a lot of detail, but it looks awful. So
right. Okay, that's great, because that was my that was my question before you did that slider. I was like, well, wouldn't you always want more detail? But yeah, obviously you've just visually shown
of course
what that looks like. Yeah.
No, I'll cover that in a second, but that's pretty much it. Like the normal information, there's so much that the normal can do. It's usually for like these tiny details. If I go really close to it and if I move the light around, it just looks fake, like plastic and awful, because it's trying to achieve a lot of depth information, but with not enough. So if I jump into the 2D view and go to normal, this is not a great normal, or at least not for this material. So it's better to have a subtle transition between those colors. And just so you understand a little bit what the normal does, it is, if I just copy this to clipboard, you can do this, by the way. You can just right click and copy to clipboard. I'm gonna go to Photoshop, and I'm just gonna paste it here so you can show you what it does. So it looks like this weird purple color because it's actually using the 3 channels to tell the software where the light is coming from. So if I go to the channels and I click on the blue color, it's kind of like telling the software, all right, the light is coming from the camera, straight from the camera, right? If I select the green one, the light is coming from the top, or like the information of details coming from the top. And if I select the red one, it's coming from one side of the screen, so left to right. So you see, if it's almost like if you place the light source on the left-hand side of the screen. Right. So when you combine them, obviously it looks like this, but it tells the software, when I move the light, look at this information that I have in this map, and then react to the light. So it is faking those details very nicely. So let's go back in here, and I just want to reduce the strength of the details. I'm not reducing the amount, I'm reducing the strength, really. But like you said, you always want to, sometimes you want to have more detail, and that's part of what you can do here. So let's say that you want to add more scratches. You want to make this a little bit more of a rough wood. We can just go to add a layer and type scratches. There we go. There's a filter called scratch. So you can click on that. It's very convenient.
Yeah.
Most of these things here are very self-explanatory. So this scratch just gives you the ability to add scratches. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the scratch, and the switch is enabled. You can also have chips if you want to. Let's just add them just for fun. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is what I usually do when I don't know what something does, right? So if you're not familiar with this is what you might do. I just crank this up to maximum, intensity to maximum, and the scale, no, let's just leave it as it is. And just try to figure out if I can see it or not. Let's go ahead and actually go closer. It was maybe too many. There we go. So
right, there's so many that it expanded out.
It completely scratched the whole surface. But yeah, so you can just push this out, and you see it is creating all these scratches as well. There's also, in the advanced parameters, you open that one up, you'll see that there is a roughness value. So you see that the more scratches that I add, the shinier it looks, because it has the shininess property or the roughness property just for the scratches. So usually if you look at a piece of wood and then you scratch something out, it will actually be a little bit more rough. We can just go here to the roughness value of just the scratches. Remember, that's what I have selected. And I can go ahead and say, just make this a bit more opaque. And then it makes more sense, right? Yeah. You can also use the normal intensity. So the amount of the intensity of the details, like so. So, pretty pretty intense. So now that I know what these sliders do just by playing around with them, I'm gonna go ahead and tweak them a bit. So maybe I don't need that many scratches. I need less than that. I'm gonna reduce the intensity a little bit as well. And then obviously let's go back to the intensity in the normal, which is the one that gives you that really strong amount.
Cool. I can see what you're saying before about the subtlety of it. When you go too extreme and then you bring it back, it looks really real when you just push it as just enough that you can see it, but not so much that it's overtaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And also depends on the type of textures that you're building. So I'm going for a more stylized version. So that's why I'm also keeping these very saturated colors, but you can change all of that. You can go to layer and type color, and there's a few options. You can replace color, change the temperature, color variation. I'm gonna go colorize just to show you something simple. If I wanna go for a more realistic texture, usually they are less saturated. So I can use this color for something like this. Like so, and then you can play with the luminosity as well and the color here, just to vary it a little bit. So, very subtle things. Nice. But yeah, I think I want to, what? It's actually not too bad. So let's reduce the intensity and maybe go for more of a yellowish tone here. Yeah, so you can do all of that. So yeah, you have now scratches and you have a bit of a rougher surface, but you can actually finish this material with a bunch of different things. So let's say that you want to, there's an actual material filter that is called wood. So wood finish. So if you're building a wood material, you can then apply this one on top, and it's just to give it the kind of like the final finish or polish to the type of wood that you're doing. And this is really cool because let's go look at it from this angle. So you have the finish type, so natural. You can also go for something like varnish, and that adds that level of varnish. So like a nice deck, oil deck, even though it has all the, the scratches and all of that, that might work. So in this case, just so that if I'm doing something a bit more realistic, I would put the scratches on top of the wood finish. That way, everything is varnished, and then these scratches happen afterwards.
Scratched. Right. Oh, so you got to think about like the sequence of events of the real world environment. Yeah.
I'll have to increase the resolution, but you can also see that in the 2D map. So let's put it back into what we were doing. I'm gonna go into 2D. So you see now the normal map has the information of the scratches.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And if you go to the roughness, now this is the varnish. Let's turn off the varnish so you can see. There are all these lighter or almost scratches. That is just telling me the areas that are rougher, that is not going to be as shiny. And the same thing goes for the in between the wooden planks. It's very, very rough. So you can see the effect of all of the layers that you're adding in all the different maps. Same thing as the map. In this case, we don't have color for the scratches, I don't think. Kind of see it in there. But yeah, let's go to the other fun stuff. I'm conscious of the time as well, so I want to be able to cover a few things so that you can play around with this stuff. All right, so in the wood finish, if I turned it back on, I just clicked on this icon. You won't see it until you hover over the layer, and you can toggle this on and off.
Right.
In the wood finish, you can go for something like raw or this zone, and you'll see it just adds this almost like if it was like serrated. I don't know, maybe the raw is easier. Maybe this is too much. I think this one. So it just gives you extra level of details for a very rough, raw material. And then you can tweak all of that. You can change the saturation of that, the luminosity, the roughness intensity. So there's a lot of things you can do. And, if this was a timber, so you have to think as well about the type of wood that you're creating. So if you have references as well, this also helps. But yeah, so let's just set it to simple matte finish. Maybe this is flattening things too much, but let's increase that. All right. So basically the matte finish allows you to change the roughness. So it is very polished, like some kind of like oil deck again. or you can change the intensity of roughness, and the same thing goes with the normal. So the varnish kind of like covers all of those tiny crevices, so you're creating the same thing. You have to also account for that. But it's just a matter of playing with the sliders. Sometimes I just have my reference next to me and I try to match things, and if it doesn't work, I just go for a different filter. But yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, so another really cool one. I don't know if you have any questions so far before I move to the next layer.
I think we'll move on to the next one. Yeah, I'm just following along. You're kind of answering all my questions as I'm getting to them. So
sweet,
which is great.
Let's say that you want to add, I don't know, like a bit of dirt, just so that it feels like it is. Obviously, we already have scratches. It already feels like a rough surface. So you might as well add a bit of dirt and some maybe mud or not mud. We'll just type dust or dirt. I'm going to type dust first because you have the option for 2. So dust. You can just add dust, and it just adds a layer of dust that also reacts to those crevices that you have.
Oh, wow.
See? So it is pretty amazing. You can change the color of the dust. I'm going to go for that. Dust usually is pretty rough, otherwise it becomes mud. The density allows you to change how much dust you want. So it can become this very dusty layer. In fact, let's switch to another way of viewing this with a plane. So you can see.
Okay, so this is just a different view of the same material.
Just different view. You're applying the material to different views. So maybe this one is a little bit easier to see. There we go. And just placing the light, holding shift and right click to rotate the light. You can see how this is reacting to the light. So yeah, you can play with the density. Just slowly add some of this dust. You can play with the opacity, the cavity smoothness. So right now, there's a lot of contrast between the cavities. So you see in the scratches, almost all scratches have dust. That's obviously where the dust will accumulate. Maybe here is pretty easy to see. So you see, it is a very harsh transition between the dusty areas or not. Yeah. So you can change the smoothing of the cavities, like so. And then the transition between wherever there is dust and there's not, you can change the transition noise. So add a little bit of noise so it feels more dusty. And yeah, it's sometimes like I don't even know what I'm doing. I just like go through the different sliders, like, oh yeah, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm doing.
Right. So it's a bit of just trial and error and playing around a little bit until it feels right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, the only thing that I would suggest if you're trying to build a realistic material is to have references, and then you start feeling around with the sliders until you find what you like. And over time, you kind of like. I already know that if I want to add a little bit of dust, I know what dust does, and I'll just search for it and apply the dust, and that's it.
We had a question around references in chat. Do you where do you usually get your references from? Do you photograph your own, or do you just Google what you're after? Do you keep things on file?
Yeah, I have a massive folder in my in my Google account.
Right.
So I just go with my phone, and whenever I find something interesting, I just take a photo. But if I'm doing like a specific project, maybe I don't have access to heavy machinery to take photos of it.
Right.
And I'll just go and search on the internet. I use a software called PureRef. You might have heard of it.
I've heard of that one. Yeah, it shows it next to your app. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's this one right here. I have it always open.
Yeah. This is really cool. We've showed this on Adobe Live before for illustrators. Sometimes I might have a figure or photograph or something like that. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, for references, I think this is absolutely fantastic. It's the best thing, and it's free as well. You can just search for PureRef. I do have maybe later on if you have time. In my YouTube channel, I have a tutorial about PureRef. So what are the tools that I use and how I use it to collect references and all of that.
Cool.
So you might be interested in that. Yeah. But yeah, let's say that you're happy with this. Just to move forward a little bit and show you something else. We are happy with this material. Let's just visualize it in a different object. And I usually do this. I like to see the material in different objects just to check how everything is working. I think this one is not the best one. Let's just go back to the rounded shape. Let's say that I'm happy with this. I might just look for something else, like maybe dirt. So
just to so is this the same material, just applying it to different shape there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and all you do here is change materials, really.
Right. Okay. Cool. And we had a question as well from chat. Can we make stylized texture in Sampler, or is it better to make it in 3D Designer? What do you suggest?
If you know how to use 3D Designer, it is a very powerful tool to create that type of stuff, but you can totally do it in 3D Sampler. It's really like, think about it, that the image that I put in here was a realistic texture. But if you painted it yourself, like if you do a set of wooden planks that you painted a stylized texture in 2D, you can just drop it in here and get materials for it as well. So that's like, yeah, absolutely. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of dirt here, just to darken some of the areas briefly. And this is just a dirt layer, so I turn this on and off. And I'll show you the stylization just to cover that really quickly. All right, so I'm happy with this. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna right-click in this material project file, these project areas where you can save all of your materials. By the way, this one that says 3D Objects Beta, it allows you to take photos around an object and 3D scan it. So that's absolutely incredible. That's one of the recent things. Let me just show you, because I'm branching out a little bit, but I think
that's
we have
cool.
time.
Let's do a tangent. That sounds awesome. Yeah, there's so much beta stuff coming out at the moment. That's
I know.
Like all this experimental tech.
So this one was literally a 3-minute scan. Wow. I was in back in April. I think I was in my honeymoon in Bali, and there was this area full of these awesome statues, and they were like really, I don't know, the whole atmosphere was like really cool. So I just went around and take pictures of it for my references, but I wanted to try this out. So if you scan or take photos all around an object from different angles, you can get this in 3D. And this is what I used to create this. So this is a 3D object, and I assign a different material to test it out. But it comes with the textures, and it comes with everything. So yeah, you just have, let's say, the more the better, but with 30 images from different angles, drag and drop it into this 3D beta, and you can actually scan. If we have time, I'll show you, but it's really awesome stuff.
That's awesome. So you could go over there, right? Like you could be somewhere in Bali. You could sort of take the photos, like scan it, bring it home, and if you had a 3D printer, you could print it. You could print it out.
That's pretty much it. You can do that, and the quality is unbelievable. Like for a 5-minute thing, it's really amazing. Wow. Yeah, hopefully, I don't know. Sometimes I just want to pack a lot of information. So if we have time, I'll show you that.
Awesome.
But
speaking of time, we've got about 15 minutes left, maybe even a little bit less. So yeah, we've got so much cool stuff to talk about. It's great.
Let's wrap it up with this material so that you know how to save them, how to export them, and I'll cover a couple more things. But tomorrow we're gonna spend a bit more time actually assigning the materials to the shape. So the goal here is just to create a bunch of materials, show you how you can build your own, so you can make a shield and a sword made out of, I don't know, clay, whatever you want. And then tomorrow we're gonna start refining it a little bit and do the render. So in the project file here, I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna click on rename. I'm gonna call it rough wood, and just press enter. So I have this, and if I want to create another material just to cover the stylization, I want to click on this icon right here, and it just builds a new material from scratch. And you see that the object doesn't change because it's just to preview whatever material you're working on. Just remember that 3D Sampler is just to build materials, or mostly to build materials. So you can start from scratch with one of the pre-made materials that come with Sampler, and then just add to it. So if I were to create another type of wood, or just to do something different, let's do a metal, this base metal, let's just drop it in there. Right, so now we have this brush metal, and it comes with other presets, so I can click and drag, or not click and drag, just click and select different presets, and you can change the roughness of that material, the variation in density of the different striations that come with the material. So you can start from one of the materials that come with Sampler. Same thing happens with a material, this oak wood. So you start with this one, and you can change the color variation. So you can stylize it very quickly by changing the thickness, the roughness, all of that good stuff, or just start with a preset. But you can change all of that from the sliders. So that's one way to do it. The other way is that if you paint it yourself, I have a semi-stylized texture here that I was actually creating just to test things out with the AI tools in Photoshop, the beta tools. So I just took a square section, select the whole thing, and I just said, give me a tileable stylized texture for a wood piece. Just gave me this. It's not great, it's not perfect, but you can turn it into something that looks cool. So same thing, you can just drag and drop, import. Is going to go through the process of building that material for you, or that set of maps. This used to be a very tedious process and really not that accurate, but nowadays with this is really easy. So no tiling. So you have that. Let's go ahead and change the...
So you don't want it to tile, is that right?
Well, you can. In fact, let me just show you. You can do that. So I'll open up the side view. So if you want to tile it, so you can just type 2 or more. Again, this is just a preview. This is not to tell the material to tile itself. It's just to preview how the tiling works. So you see that there's clear gaps or clear seams through it.
Yeah.
But in here, if you want to, what I would do is go through the height map. It's just a lot easier to visualize it with black and white, I think. You can press the T to tile. And you see, if I hover over this centerpiece, which is the actual texture, you have this red frame. But if I go outside of it, you won't see it. So it's a lot easier to visualize. So if I go into full screen with the 2D, there is a very convenient thing called tiling. You can click on tiling, and it will try to tile it for you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it will give you this weird edge. So this is how it looks in 3D. So it's not great. So what you need to do is just play around with this sort of placement of the texture. So I can go ahead and scale this down a bit, maybe. Just playing around with it. And then with the edge here, you can change the threshold. You can change the amount of blurriness, the smoothness. This is not going to be a great example, because it's very, very different.
Right. It's very rough.
Yeah. But you can get a pretty good, pretty decent result.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so let's say that's something like this. Then on top of that, if it is not tiling, currently it's not tiling perfectly, you can force it. So you can just go make a tile. So there's another tool. If the first tiling doesn't work, this uses a different way of tiling things. So you can use this to play around with the contrast, the smoothness, the color equalizer. So this is already better. There's still some seams in here, but you can play around with this and then run another make it tile effect on top of it if you want to.
Right.
But yeah, this is kind of like how I would go about creating the tiling. It's not working at the moment because it's very harsh difference between the two. But you can totally do it with these two objects. Maybe this is not the best example. Anyway, this was just to show you that you can also do stylized textures as well. But let's go back to the rough wood so that I show you how you can send it to Painter and start playing around with the materials. And I'll show you how to create this type of stuff as well in Painter. So I'm going to jump into Painter before I do anything. This is kind of like what you should see when you open Painter. The UI might look slightly different depending on what version you have or how you have arranged it, because you can arrange it the way you want to. So what I want to do is go ahead and bring in the object. So that's the OBJ. So if you downloaded the resources, it's called the Zelda Shield and Sword.obj, and literally just drag and drop it in here in the viewport. And then you're going to get this pop-up. I'm going to make sure that these are the default settings. I haven't done anything weird. Make sure that this UV tile set is off. In the auto unwrap is also off because I already did that for you. So we already have UVs. And just in case you're not familiar with 3D stuff, UV is basically the 2D coordinates that the software uses to visualize whatever texture you have to wrap in 3D. So if you have, if you look at your t-shirt, for example, you have the seams in your t-shirt. That's where everything was sewed together. But if you cut it through the seams, you will be able to unwrap this 3D object in a 2D space. So that's what the UVs are. Okay. So I've done that for you, and I'll show you what that means. So I'm going to click OK, and it will appear here. And you'll see that we have this, again, Alt key and left click, you can move around. Alt and middle mouse button, you can pan around, and Alt and right click, you can zoom in and out. Or you can use the mouse, the scroll wheel, and it will zoom in wherever you have the mouse pointing at. You'll see that there is a lot of information, a lot of details missing, and that comes from the normal map and the mesh maps. So just to give you a rough idea of how this works, in ZBrush, if I select if I select this shield, you see I have all of these scratches and indentations and all of that. That's because I have about 4 million points, 4 million polygons in here. So I can add a lot of details. So what you do usually is you have two versions of your mesh. You have one mesh that has all the details with millions of polygons, and then you have one that is a low version of this. So let me just show you what that looks like.
Is that just a file size rendering kind of thing?
Yeah, in a way. It's like if you nowadays is not as necessary, but it's just a way that you can basically convert all that information that you have in the high resolution mesh with all the details into a series of maps, like the normal map that I showed you with the blue image that covers all those details. So you can just export that and you will get kind of like the same amount of details, but in a low res mesh. So you see there's less points in here. Each one of these squares represent a polygon. So there's a lot less than that. So I exported this low res mesh, which is what you see in here. I'll show you. It's a little bit more, there's a bit more than that. So if I turn on the wireframe, you can see these are the actual polygons that you see, right? But if you want to get all those details, that's where the maps or the mesh maps comes from. So you don't have to worry about all of this. I've already created all of that for you. So all you need to do at this point is that once you drag and drop your sword and your shield, you can go to the folder that comes with the resources called mesh maps. This one right here. Hang on. So all of these images. So these are slightly different than textures or like the textures for materials. These are just maps that the software uses to read how or interpret the 3D object. So the normal map is with all the details. This curvature map tells the software where the crevices are to highlight them. The ambient occlusion gives you the contact shadows, that sort of stuff. This position one, it tells the software what piece is pointing up and what piece is pointing left and that sort of thing. So all you need to do is drag all of these images into the asset library here. Just drag and drop them and then select them in here. Just click and drag. Select texture because that's what it is we're just telling the software how to import these resources, and currently they're just textures. And right now we can import it to this current session or to a project if you save this as working file, shield, whatever, or if you want them into your library. So you click on library, they will appear every time that you open Painter.
So for something you use all the time or something like that. Yeah,
so if you create a material, you can do that in this way. In this case, I'm just gonna do current session or project, and I'll save it after so that it only affects this project. So I'm gonna click on import and they will appear straight away in there.
That's awesome. Just letting you know, and he's going quickly. We've only got about 3 minutes left.
All right, I'm gonna set it up and we're gonna leave everything set up so that tomorrow we can apply those materials. So what I'll do is in the occlusion area, I'm just gonna drag and drop it here to what it says, select ambient occlusion, and I'll do the same thing with the curvature to the curvature, the position to the position. Just look at the names here on the texture settings and add them in there. The select ID, the normal map, I'll get closer so you can see the difference. When I apply the normal map, you see now we have all these details recovered from the high resolution mesh. So that's what this map is doing. Let me do world space normal and thickness as well, even though we're not going to use it. That's it. That's all the setup that you need to do. Apply those textures into the texture setting, save this file, and we're good to go for tomorrow. Now, one more thing just to wrap it up. If I go back to sampler and select my rough wood that I created, so I just select the material here. It's going to take a while to recompute all of these things quickly. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and click on this button to share it. So I can share it with you guys, or you can just go to send to Substance 3D Painter. So if you click on that, Sampler is going to compile all that information, all those different images and maps that we set up. And when it finishes, we go back to Painter, and it will be here. So
you just send it to the app, the other app.
Straight
That's
away.
Awesome. Yeah.
So now we have it as a material in our material library. We can just click and drag and drop it, whatever. I'll cover how to mask things out and apply it in different areas later. But now we have the wood happening here. And then you can go to the properties and change the tiling so that we have more of it, like so. So this is what we're gonna use for the inside.
Awesome.
But at this point, just go ahead and save. You can play around with some of the things that come with Painter. You can just give it a mod material, whatever you want. It is ready to go. And tomorrow I'm gonna cover how to build the materials within Painter, a little bit more advanced and non-destructive workflow. But yeah, that's it. So we just managed to create a wood material in today's lesson.
That's awesome. Oh man, we covered so much ground, and yeah, not a lot of I'm just sitting back. You're just so good at explaining what's going on and everything. So I didn't have to ask too many questions. I had a great time, Pablo. I'm going to wrap up before we get cut off. Thank you so much. So for everyone watching, we will be back tomorrow. So we've got more time with Pablo. Thank goodness, because there's so much to talk to him about and so much to share. I had a great time. So again, thank you so much, Pablo, and I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Thank you so much. I had a really good time, and I'll see you tomorrow with the rendering stage.
Awesome. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.
All right. See you. Have a good one.